while preparing for the pre-sentence investigation report, you're going to want to be thinking about how can you influence this report in such a way to help you pursue administrative relief later. Whether, I mean, you want your pre-sentence investigation report to work toward getting you the lowest possible sentence, but that's like table stakes. That's the first thing you've got to do. You've also got to be thinking about what's going to happen after a judge says, I hereby sentence you to the custody of the Attorney General. Who are the people that are going to be influencing your pathway to liberty, and what can you do to influence their decisions? The earlier you start working on building that strategy, the better off you are going to be. And it's one of the reasons I really encourage you to develop your own personal narrative. Now, I know there's a lot of people who steal my work, people who served a year in jail, and they want to masquerade as they're an expert as a consultant. But the reality is, you don't need a consultant to do this. You can do this on your own. There's nothing proprietary about building a very powerful personal narrative. A personal narrative should really just focus on helping the judge get to know who you are. What have you learned from this experience? In what ways can you identify with the victim or the harm of this case? In what ways have you shown accountability or have you grown? What steps are you taking to reconcile with society or make amends? The more you can develop that story into one that humanizes you, that helps others who will have enormous influence over your life see you as a human being and not just the way that prosecutors are going to try to present you, the more effective you are going to be in all forms of self-advocacy. And it doesn't matter if you're facing 5 years and the judge gives you 36 months, okay? You're still going to want to get lower. That was a victory, okay? You got 36 instead of 60 months, but you're still going to want to advance that. You're going to want to get into administrative programs that could let you go home earlier. You are going to want to make sure that you are positioned for the highest level of liberty possible when you come home. You're going to want to position yourself for early termination of supervised release or potentially for a clemency. The harder you work on preparing your personal narrative, the more effective you are going to be. So really just use our website. I always make 3 promises. I'm never going to lie to you, never going to ask you to do something I didn't do, never going to ask you to pay a penny. But you've got to do the work yourself. You've got to understand, well, how should I prepare my narrative? Okay? You want to start off, and it's going to depend. If you are, let's just say that you went to trial and you want to preserve matters for appeal, well, you may not want to accept responsibility because you don't feel like you broke the law, or you felt like there was an error in due process and you think that your attorney is going to prevail on appeal. If that's the case, that should influence the strategy you pursue in writing your narrative. If on the flip side, you did plead guilty and you want to move forward in accepting responsibility, you really want to own it and remove all excuses and just focus on a strong, comprehensive mitigation strategy that focuses on remorse, on context, on some of the turning points described when you realized that change was necessary, and talk about the steps that you started taking and that you are continuing to take to make amends. So let me just go off the top of my head. How would I start a narrative if I went to trial and I don't want to talk about the case? It's really quite simple. You would say something like this: Your Honor, I stand before you in full respect for the jury's verdict, and I want to acknowledge that I am now convicted of the crimes for which I was charged. On advice of counsel, I'm not supposed to talk about my case or what I've learned from this case with specifics to the case or anything that could influence the work that they are doing on appeal. So I'm going to ask you to allow me to just kind of introduce myself, because I know you've got a very heavy job of figuring out the appropriate sentence for me. And I would think that I could potentially help you understand a little bit about my background, about how I got here, about the influences that have led me through this journey and what I've learned from this experience, and more importantly, what I am doing about that. And I would like to take the opportunity to share that information with you in this narrative, right? That is a strategy that you could then go on and develop as if you're accepting responsibility, right? The judge doesn't know anything about you other than what he saw in the papers that the government has submitted or that your defense attorney has submitted. But the judge already knows what your defense attorney is going to say. It wouldn't matter what crime you have. Your defense attorney's job is to advocate for a lower sentence, and he's going to do that. The prosecutor's job is to represent the people, the government, and they're going to advocate for a more severe sentence. That's their job. The judge knows that. He probably at various times in his career worked as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, or both. And he's heard from hundreds, if not thousands of them. What the judge doesn't hear from is you. He doesn't know who you are, how you got here, what you've learned from this experience, what your goals are in the future, and it's super important for you to do that. And I provide a lot of examples on that on our website at Prison Professors. You can do this on your own, but you have to understand what tone should you take? What style of writing? And in this era of artificial intelligence, you have a lot of assets to help you, but nothing can determine whether, other than you, whether you're honest and authentic. And you want to be honest and authentic. You want to be clear, humble, but also direct. Don't try to speak like your lawyer unless that's how you normally speak. Strike a balance of being remorseful, but also you want to show that you're hopeful and you're resilient and you are going to move forward with dignity and work towards becoming better. Focus on your accountability and highlight what you can control moving forward. There are things that you won't be able to control, but really focus in writing your narrative on what steps you are taking. You can't control external influences, but you could absolutely control all the things that you are doing. So that's one of the reasons that I would highly recommend you use our website at prisonprofessors.org and build your profile, a profile that becomes an indisputable body of evidence where you could write about your biography. So it's something different from what the prosecutors have said. You can write about your journaling and what you've been doing to try and make things right, how you've reflected on your past decisions, on the lessons that you learned, and the values by which you've lived. You want to develop a chronology or a timeline, and you could look at the founders page on prisonprofessors.org, and you will see how I do that. Okay, I'm not asking you to do anything I didn't do. This is a strategy that you could use to help the judge get to know how seriously you've taken these proceedings. And I would really encourage you to share specifics with concrete examples of growth, of efforts that you've made to volunteer or to make amends with society and reconcile. Talk about your mentors. Describe where you are getting your information and where you are learning. This is your chance to truly reframe your identity in the eyes of the system. You don't need to convince your mom or your dad or your people who love you that you don't belong in prison. They know that. You are trying to influence a body of stakeholders why you're different. So you want to use your narrative as a very strong body of work that will become an asset for self-advocacy. Hopefully your attorney will use it. Hopefully your probation officer will use it and weave it directly into the report. But at the end of the day, this is a strategy for you much later during the journey. And you could learn all about that by working through all of the lessons and blogs on prisonprofessors.org. Nobody should work harder than you on building this pathway to a better life. And it's the reason I highly encourage you to start building your profile, document what you're doing. Starting today. It's never too early and it's never too late to start preparing for a successful outcome. And if you do it well, you are going to have a very strong asset that you could use in your own self-advocacy for mitigation, not only at the pre-sentence investigation stage, not only at the sentencing stage, not only in the Bureau of Prisons, not only on supervised release, but really in architecting your pathway to success again on the other side of this journey. And I know you can do it just like I did. My name is Michael Santos. I'm the founder of Prison Professors. I do hope that you are a subscriber to our newsletter so that you can get all the information that we provide on our advocacy efforts, and follow us on social so you'll know what we're doing. Again, I just want you to say, I believe in you, and be cool.